The space station hung in orbit above Earth like a massive steel wheel spinning slowly against the stars. Inside, hundreds of cadets from dozens of worlds trained together at the Galactic Defense Academy. They came from every corner of known space to learn how to protect their planets and work together as allies. Zekthor walked through the station's corridors with his head held high. He was a Krathian, and everyone knew what that meant. His species were warriors, bred through millions of years of evolution to be the perfect hunters. He stood 7 feet tall, his body covered in natural armor plates that gleamed under the station lights. 4 powerful arms hung at his sides, each one capable of crushing steel. His eyes, all 6 of them, could see in multiple directions at once. He had never known fear in his entire life. Back on his homeworld of Kratha Prime, Zekthor had been the greatest hunter of his generation. He had tracked and killed venomous sky serpents that could swallow a full-grown human whole. He had wrestled gravity bears in the deep canyons where the pull of the planet was 3 times normal. He had survived the trial of fangs, a deadly ritual that killed 3 out of every 10 young Krathians who attempted it. Fear was not something his people understood. It had been bred out of them long ago. The other cadets at the academy gave him plenty of space when he passed. The Venturi, peaceful fish-like beings from the water world of Aquos, practically fled when they saw him coming. The Drell, small insect creatures who were brilliant engineers, clicked nervously and looked away. Even the human cadets, who were known for their stubborn bravery, seemed cautious around him. Zekthor enjoyed the respect. He had earned it. His combat instructor was a human woman named Lieutenant Karen Murphy. She was small compared to Zekthor, barely reaching his chest even when he slouched. Her hair was red and cut short in a military style. She had sharp green eyes that seemed to see everything. Unlike the other humans, she never looked impressed or intimidated by him. This annoyed Zekthor more than he wanted to admit. On his first day in her advanced combat class, Karen had watched him defeat 3 opponents in quick succession during sparring practice. Each match lasted less than 30 seconds. The other cadets nursed their bruises and accepted defeat with dignity. Zekthor had been polite about his victories, but everyone could see his pride. "Not bad," Karen had said in a flat voice. Just those 2 words, then she moved on to the next pair of sparring cadets. Not bad? Zekthor had destroyed his opponents. He had moved with perfect precision and overwhelming force. Not bad was what you said to someone who performed adequately. It was not what you said to the greatest warrior in the class. Over the next week, Zekthor dominated every challenge Karen threw at him. Hand-to-hand combat? He won every match. Weapons training? His reaction time was faster than the targeting computers. Survival exercises? He found food, water, and shelter before any other cadet even finished reading their mission briefing. Strategic planning? His warrior instincts gave him an edge that book learning could not match. The other cadets began to whisper about him. Some were impressed. Others were jealous. A few seemed frightened. Zekthor told himself he did not care what they thought, but secretly he enjoyed being the best. On the 7th day, after another flawless performance in the simulation room, Zekthor made a mistake. He let his pride turn into boasting. "Nothing in this galaxy can make a Krathian warrior feel fear," he announced to the class as they gathered their equipment. "We are apex predators. We have no natural enemies. Fear is for prey animals, not for hunters like my people." Several cadets looked uncomfortable. A human named Pete Johnson shook his head slightly, as if he knew something Zekthor did not. Lisa Grant, another human, smiled in a strange way. The Drell cadet named Chitter actually made a sound that might have been laughter, though it was hard to tell with his species. Karen Murphy had been standing near the door, reviewing training scores on her datapad. At Zekthor's words, she looked up. Her expression did not change, but something flickered in those green eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or perhaps something else, is that so? She asked quietly. Zekthor stood straighter, all 4 arms crossed over his chest in a traditional Krathian pose of confidence. "Yes, instructor. My people have eliminated fear from our biology. We face every challenge without hesitation. It is why we are the finest warriors in the known galaxy." "Interesting claim," Karen said. She tapped her datapad a few times, then looked back at him. "Tell me, Zekthor, have you ever been to Earth?" The question surprised him. "No, instructor. This is my first time at the station. I have not yet visited your planet's surface." "Then you have not experienced everything the galaxy has to offer," Karen said. She walked closer to him, and despite her small size, she did not look intimidated at all. You know, we humans have a saying, pride comes before a fall. Do you understand what that means? I understand the words, Zekthor replied carefully, but I do not see how they apply to stating simple facts about my species. Karen smiled then, a small smile that did not quite reach her eyes. How about this, Cadet? After class tomorrow, stop by my quarters. I have something I would like you to meet. Something? Zekthor asked. His translator implant gave him perfect understanding of human language, but sometimes their meanings were unclear. What kind of something? You will see, Karen said. Consider it part of your training. A warrior should be willing to face new experiences, right? Since you fear nothing. The way she emphasized those last words made several of the human cadets laugh quietly. Zekthor did not understand the joke if there was one. Still, he could not refuse without looking weak or cowardly. That would be worse than any physical defeat. Of course, instructor, he said with dignity. I will be there. Good, Karen said. She was definitely smiling now. I think you and my roommate will get along just fine. She walked away before Zekthor could ask what she meant by roommate. He assumed it was another human, perhaps one of the station personnel. Maybe she wanted him to help with some kind of demonstration or special training. That would make sense. As the class dispersed, Pete Johnson walked past Zekthor and patted his shoulder with one hand. The gesture was friendly, but also seemed sympathetic somehow. Good luck tomorrow, buddy, Pete said. You're going to need it. I do not need luck, Zekthor replied automatically. I am a Krathian warrior. Pete just shook his head and walked away, still smiling. Zekthor returned to his quarters that evening feeling confident. Whatever Karen Murphy wanted to show him, he would face it with the courage and strength of his people. He had hunted the deadliest creatures on his homeworld. He had proven himself against every challenge the Academy offered. Whatever waited in the instructor's quarters tomorrow would be no different. He had no way of knowing how wrong he was. He had no way of knowing that his entire understanding of fear was about to change, all because of a 12-pound orange cat named Mr. Whiskers. The next day dragged on forever for Zekthor. Every class seemed longer than usual. His mind kept wandering to the meeting with Lieutenant Murphy. He told himself it was simple curiosity, nothing more. A warrior should always be aware of what challenges lay ahead. That was basic strategy. When his final class ended, several of the human cadets gave him knowing looks. Lisa Grant actually said good luck as she left. Zekthor found this strange. Why would he need luck to meet someone's roommate? Humans often confused him with their odd social customs. He made his way through the station to the officers' housing section. The corridors here were quieter than the cadet areas. The lighting was softer, more yellow than the harsh white lights in the training rooms. Some doors had small decorations outside them, personal items that made each quarters unique. Zekthor's people did not decorate their living spaces. A warrior needed only the basics. He found Karen Murphy's door and pressed the chime button. A moment later, her voice came through the speaker. Come in, Zekthor. Doors unlocked. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Zekthor stepped inside and stopped, surprised by what he saw. The quarters were full of things. Earth plants sat in pots on shelves, their green leaves reaching toward artificial sunlight. Books made from actual paper lined one wall, their spines showing titles in several languages. Soft furniture and warm colors filled the space, so different from the metal and plastic of the rest of the station. Pictures hung on the walls showing Earth landscapes, mountains, oceans, and forests. It smelled different too. Not bad, just unfamiliar. There was the scent of the plants, something floral that Zekthor could not identify, and underneath it all, something else, something alive. Karen sat on a chair near the window that looked out at Earth below. She wore casual clothes instead of her uniform, more relaxed than Zekthor had ever seen her. Welcome, she said. Thanks for coming. Please sit down if you can find a spot you like. Zekthor looked around carefully. His 6 eyes scanned every surface, every shadow. He had been trained to assess any new environment for threats. That was when he saw it. On the back of the long, soft chair that humans called a couch, something was lying down. It was small, covered in orange and white fur with a long tail that hung down over the edge. As Zekthor watched, it raised one back leg straight up in the air and began grooming itself with its tongue. That is your roommate? Zekthor asked. He felt confused. The creature was tiny, maybe the size of his smallest weapon back home. That's right, Karen said with a smile. Zekthor, meet Mr. Whiskers. Mr. Whiskers, this is Zekthor. He's the cadet I told you about. The creature this Mr. Whiskers stopped grooming. It lowered its leg and turned its head to look directly at Zekthor. Everything changed in that moment. The creature's eyes were large and round, colored a bright green gold that seemed to glow in the light. The pupils were not round like human eyes or compound like Drell eyes. They were vertical slits, narrow and focused. Those eyes locked onto Zekthor with an intensity that made something deep in his brain start screaming warnings. Predator. Apex predator. Danger. Zekthor's forearms tensed. His armor plates shifted slightly, an automatic defensive response. Every one of his 6 eyes focused on the small creature. Mr. Whiskers stood up slowly, arching his back in a long stretch. His mouth opened in a yawn, revealing small white fangs and a pink tongue. The yawn seemed to go on forever. Then the creature sat down, wrapped his tail around his paws, and continued to stare at Zekthor. What is this creature? Zekthor asked. His voice sounded strange even to his own ears. He's a cat, Karen explained. She seemed completely relaxed, as if there was nothing unusual happening. Specifically a domestic cat from Earth. His breed is called an orange tabby, though we mostly just call him Mr. Whiskers because he has such impressive whiskers. See them? Those long white hairs on his face? Zekthor saw them. He saw everything about the creature with crystal clarity, the way it held itself with absolute confidence, the way its eyes never blinked, never looked away, the way its ears, small and triangular, swiveled slightly to track every sound, the way its tail twitched just at the tip like a weapon waiting to strike. It is very small, Zekthor said, trying to sound calm and failing. About 12 pounds, Karen agreed. That's roughly 5.5 kilograms. Pretty average for a neutered male cat. Mr. Whiskers suddenly stood up and jumped down from the couch. He landed without making a sound, his paws touching the floor as softly as falling leaves. Then he began walking directly toward Zekthor. Zekthor took a step backward. He did not mean to. His body moved on its own, responding to instincts he did not know he possessed. The movement was small, just one step, but it happened. A Krathian warrior had retreated from a creature that weighed 12 pounds. He's friendly, Karen said, watching carefully. He just wants to say hello. Mr. Whiskers walked with a strange grace. His body moved like liquid, each paw placed with perfect precision. His head stayed level while his shoulders and hips rolled with each step. His tail stuck straight up in the air with just the tip curved like a question mark. The cat reached Zekthor's feet and paused. Then deliberately he rubbed his head against Zekthor's leg. Every muscle in Zekthor's body froze. The creature was touching him, making physical contact, marking him with scent glands located in its face. His translator implant helpfully informed him. A sound started coming from the cat. A low rumbling vibration that Zekthor felt through his leg where they made contact. His auditory sensors analyzed the frequency and his brain interpreted it as a threat display. A warning growl like the predators of his homeworld made before attacking. He's purring, Karen said. That means he likes you. It's a sign of contentment. That sound is a sign of being content? Zekthor asked. It did not sound content. It sounded like a warning. For cats, yes. Karen stood up and walked over. She bent down and ran her hand along Mr. Whiskers' back. The cat's purring got louder. Humans have lived with cats for thousands of years. We domesticated them, or maybe they domesticated us. Scientists still argue about which way it happened. Why would you bring a predator into your home? Zekthor asked. The question came out more desperate than he intended. Karen looked up at him with those sharp green eyes. Because they're wonderful companions. They're independent, intelligent, and affectionate on their own terms. Plus, they're excellent hunters. Back on Earth, cats keep our homes free of rodents and insects. Mr. Whiskers finished rubbing against Zekthor and walked away, his tail held high. He jumped back onto the couch, turned around 3 times, and settled down into a ball of orange fur. Within seconds, he appeared to be asleep, but Zekthor noticed that the cat's ears still moved, tracking sounds, and every few moments one eye would open just a slit, checking the room before closing again. Cats are apex predators for their size, Karen continued, sitting back down. They have incredible reflexes, perfect night vision, retractable claws, and hunting instincts refined over millions of years of evolution. They're one of the most successful predator species Earth has ever produced. Zekthor could not take his eyes off the sleeping cat. And you keep them in your quarters. By choice. Of course, Karen smiled. Millions of humans do. They're family to us. Zekthor's world had just become much more complicated. The creature on the couch was small and apparently harmless. It was sleeping peacefully. Karen Murphy clearly loved it, but every instinct Zekthor possessed told him that Mr. Whiskers was dangerous in ways he could not fully understand. Zekthor could not stop thinking about the cat. That night, alone in his quarters, he lay on his sleeping platform and stared at the ceiling. His mind kept replaying the moment when Mr. Whiskers had looked at him with those vertical slit eyes. The feeling it triggered was completely foreign to him, uncomfortable, wrong. He tried to meditate like his trainers had taught him back home, but it did not help. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cat. Finally, he gave up on sleep and accessed the station's database. If he could not rest, he would learn. Knowledge was a weapon, and he needed to understand what he was facing. He started searching for information about Earth cats. What he found disturbed him more than anything he had encountered in his life. Cats were not just predators. They were perfect predators. According to Earth records, domestic cats successfully hunted thousands of different species despite their small size. Their success rate was higher than most large predators. They had retractable claws that stayed sharp because they were hidden when not in use. They could jump 6 times their body length in a single leap. They could fall from heights that would kill most creatures and land safely on their feet. Their eyes could see in near darkness. Their whiskers sensed air movement so precisely they could navigate in complete blackness. They could hear sounds far above and below what most species could detect. But what disturbed Zekthor most was how they hunted. Cats did not just kill for food. They played with their prey. They would catch something, release it, catch it again over and over. Earth scientists called it practice hunting, a way to keep their skills sharp. To Zekthor, it seemed like cruelty. He found historical records showing that ancient human civilizations had worshipped cats as gods. The Egyptians had a cat goddess named Bastet. People who killed cats in those times faced severe punishment. Even now, thousands of years later, humans treated cats with special respect. The more he read, the less he understood. Why would humans invite these creatures into their homes? Why would they feed them, care for them, and let them sleep in their beds? The records showed that cats did not even need humans. They could survive perfectly well on their own. They chose to live with humans, but they remained independent. They were not tamed like other Earth animals. They were just willing to coexist. Zekthor spent hours reading until his eyes ached and his head hurt. When he finally stopped, the station's artificial day cycle was beginning. He had not slept at all. At breakfast in the Cadet dining hall, he saw Pete Johnson and his friends sitting at a table. Zekthor had been assigned to work with them on a team project. They were supposed to meet today to plan their presentation on multi-species tactical coordination. "Hey, Zekthor," Pete called out, waving him over. "Come sit with us." Zekthor carried his tray of protein supplements and joined them. Pete sat across from him, with Lisa Grant on one side and Danny Cole on the other. They were eating food that Zekthor's database identified as breakfast sandwiches, a human morning meal. "So," Lisa said with a smile, "I heard you met Mr. Whiskers yesterday." "Yes," Zekthor said carefully. "The instructor's cat." All 3 humans grinned at each other. Danny laughed and shook his head. "Man, I wish I could have seen your face. Karen told us you went completely still when he walked up to you." "The creature surprised me," Zekthor admitted. "I was not familiar with its species." "You researched them yet?" Pete asked. "Because if you did, you probably know by now that cats are basically tiny murder machines." "Murder machines?" Zekthor's translator struggled with the phrase. "He means they're really good hunters," Lisa explained. "Pete's exaggerating, but yeah, cats are pretty fierce when they want to be. That's part of why we love them. They're predators, but they're also soft and cuddly." "I do not understand the appeal," Zekthor said honestly. "Most aliens don't," Danny said. "You should see the Venturi's reaction to cats. They completely freak out. Something about cats being land predators really messes with their fish brains." Speaking of cats, Lisa reached down beside her chair and lifted something up. "I brought Shadow to breakfast. Hope you don't mind." Zekthor's forearms gripped the edge of the table. In Lisa's lap sat another cat, this one completely black except for a small white spot on its chest. Its eyes were yellow and bright, staring at Zekthor with clear interest. "This is Shadow," Lisa said, stroking the cat's head. "He's been with me for 2 years now. Best friend I ever had." Shadow's eyes never left Zekthor. The cat's pupils were wide in the dining hall's bright lights, making its eyes look huge and endless. Its ears pointed directly forward, focused entirely on the massive alien sitting across the table. "We're meeting in Recreation Room 7 after breakfast," Pete said, apparently not noticing Zekthor's discomfort. "We need to plan our presentation." "Lisa, you bringing Shadow?" "Yeah, he gets lonely if I leave him in my quarters too long," Lisa said. The black cat climbed up onto her shoulder and perched there like it was the most natural thing in the world. The rest of breakfast was torture for Zekthor. Shadow watched him the entire time, those yellow eyes tracking his every movement. When Zekthor shifted in his seat, the cat's head would tilt slightly, following. When he reached for his drink, the cat's eyes would track his hand. It was like being studied by a tiny, furry tactical computer. After they finished eating, the group headed to the recreation room. It was a medium-sized space with large windows showing the stars outside, comfortable chairs, and several tables for working or playing games. Pete and Danny set up their data pads and started reviewing their project notes. Lisa sat on a couch with Shadow still on her shoulder. Zekthor tried to focus on the work. He really did, but Shadow had other plans. The black cat jumped down from Lisa's shoulder and landed silently on the couch cushion. Then it jumped to the floor. Then it started walking around the room, tail high, looking at everything, but mostly looking at Zekthor. "So I think we should start with the historical examples," Pete was saying, pointing at his datapad screen. "Show how different species have worked together in past conflicts." Shadow stalked closer to Zekthor's chair. The cat's body was low, shoulders rolling with each step. Its tail swished back and forth in a slow rhythm. "Then we move into modern tactical theory," Danny added. "The stuff we learned in Murphy's class about compensating for different species' strengths and weaknesses." Shadow was behind Zekthor's chair now. He could not see it, but he could feel it. Every nerve in his body was screaming warnings about the predator in the room. "Zekthor, you okay?" Lisa asked. "You look tense." "I am fine," Zekthor lied. His tail, which he normally kept perfectly still, was twitching nervously. That was his mistake. Shadow saw the movement. To the cat, Zekthor's tail was a toy, something moving that triggered every hunting instinct. Shadow crouched, wiggled its hindquarters twice, and pounced. The cat landed on Zekthor's tail with all four paws, tiny claws extended just enough to grip. For Shadow, it was play. For Zekthor, it was an attack by a predator he could not understand. Zekthor yelped, a sound no Krathian warrior should ever make. He jumped up from his chair so fast it fell over backward. His tail yanked free from the cat's grip and he leaped onto the table, all four arms spread wide in a defensive position. Shadow sat on the floor where Zekthor had been, looking pleased with himself. The cat's tail swished happily. Pete, Lisa, and Danny stared at Zekthor for one long moment. Then all three of them burst out laughing. "Oh man," Pete gasped between laughs. "That was amazing." "Shadow, you bad boy," Lisa said, but she was giggling too. She picked up the cat and cuddled him. "You scared the big alien warrior." Zekthor stood on the table trying to recover his dignity. It was impossible. The great fearless Krathian warrior, hunter of sky serpents, survivor of the Trial of Fangs, had just jumped on a table to escape a 12-pound cat. "It surprised me," Zekthor said, climbing down carefully. "I was not prepared." "Sure," Danny said, still grinning. "That's what they all say." The rest of the meeting was difficult. Zekthor could not concentrate. Every time Shadow moved, his eyes tracked the cat. Every time Shadow looked at him, he felt that same instinctive response, that warning his brain kept sending. Danger. Predator. Be careful. It was humiliating. It was confusing. And worst of all, the other cadets would not stop talking about it. The story of Zekthor jumping on a table to escape Shadow spread through the academy faster than a virus. By the next day, everyone knew. The fearless Krathian warrior was afraid of cats. Other cadets started making jokes. Nothing mean, just playful teasing. But each joke felt like a knife to Zekthor's pride. When he walked into the dining hall, someone made a soft meowing sound. When he entered the training room, he caught two Drell cadets clicking to each other and looking at pictures of cats on their data pads. Worse than the teasing was what it did to his performance. Zekthor found himself distracted during training. He lost a sparring match to a human cadet he should have beaten easily. His scores on tactical simulations dropped. He could not focus. Every night he lay awake thinking about cats. Those eyes, those claws, the way they moved with such confidence. He started seeing cats everywhere on the station. There were more than he had realized. A gray cat sleeping in a sunny spot near the observation windows. A white cat with odd-colored eyes walking through the gardens. A large fluffy cat that belonged to one of the engineering officers. They were everywhere, these tiny predators, living among the humans like it was perfectly normal. He watched how humans interacted with their cats. They spoke to them in gentle voices, calling them sweet names. They pet them and scratched behind their ears. They bought them special food and toys, and the cats accepted all of this attention when they felt like it, and ignored it when they did not. The cats were in complete control of the relationship, and the humans did not seem to mind at all. Sekthor's confusion grew into obsession. His training suffered more each day. After a particularly bad performance in combat simulation where he ranked near the bottom of the class, Lieutenant Karen Murphy called him to her office. Her office was small and neat, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a window looking out at Earth. On the desk sat a picture of Mr. Whiskers sleeping in a patch of sunlight. Sekthor's eyes kept drifting to that picture. "Sit down, Cadet," Karen said. Her voice was not angry, just concerned. Sekthor folded his large body into the chair across from her desk. It creaked under his weight. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Karen asked. "Your performance has dropped significantly over the past week. That's not like you. When you first arrived, you were top of every class. Now you're barely passing some exercises." Sekthor was silent for a long moment. Pride told him to stay quiet, to handle this himself. But he was exhausted. He had barely slept in days. The obsession was eating him alive. "The cats," he said finally. "I cannot stop thinking about them." Karen leaned back in her chair, her expression softening. "Go on." "My people are warriors," Sekthor said. The words came slowly, painfully. "We pride ourselves on being fearless. For millions of years, we have been the apex predators of our world. Nothing hunts us. We hunt everything else. Fear was bred out of us long ago. It is who we are." He paused, struggling with what to say next. "But these cats," he continued, "they trigger something in my brain that I cannot control. When I look at them, my body responds as if they are dangerous. My instincts scream warnings. I cannot stop it. And I do not understand why a creature so small makes me feel this way." "That bothers you," Karen said. It was not a question. "It destroys me," Sekthor admitted. "I am supposed to be a warrior. I have faced creatures that could tear me apart. I have survived trials that killed 3 out of every 10 who attempted them. But a 12-pound cat makes me jump on tables. How can I be a warrior if I cannot even control my own fear of something so harmless?" Karen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the blue and white planet below. "Let me tell you something about fear, Sekthor," she said. "Fear is not weakness. Fear is information. It is your brain telling you to be careful, to pay attention. Every species has fears built into them through evolution. Humans are afraid of snakes and spiders even though most of them are harmless. We are afraid of heights, of darkness, of being alone. These fears kept our ancestors alive." She turned to face him. "Your people bred fear out of themselves, or they think they did. But maybe what happened with you and Mr. Whiskers proves something different. Maybe fear is still there, buried deep, waiting for the right trigger. And maybe that's not a bad thing." "How can fear not be bad for a warrior?" Sekthor asked. "Because warriors who never feel fear make stupid mistakes," Karen said. "They take unnecessary risks. They underestimate their opponents. Fear, real fear, makes you sharp. It makes you careful. It keeps you alive." She walked back to her desk and sat down. "You know what I think? I think somewhere in your species' history, you encountered something like cats. Something small and fast and deadly. And the Krathians who felt cautious around those creatures survived. The ones who did not feel fear got killed. That survival instinct is still in you, Sekthor. That's not weakness. That's your ancestors trying to keep you alive." Sekthor considered this. It made sense in a way he had not thought about before. "But how do I overcome it?" he asked. "I cannot continue like this. I'm failing my training." Karen smiled. "You overcome it by understanding it. Fear plus ignorance equals panic, but fear plus knowledge equals respect. Let me help you. Come to my quarters every day after class. Spend time with Mr. Whiskers, learn about cats. Not from a database, but from actual experience. Face the fear instead of running from it." "I do not know if I can," Sekthor said honestly. "Yes, you can," Karen replied firmly. "Because real courage is not the absence of fear. Real courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. You are a warrior, Zekthor. Warriors face their challenges even when those challenges are small and furry. So began a new routine. Every day after class, Zekthor went to Karen Murphy's quarters. At first, he stood by the door while Mr. Whiskers lounged on the couch, occasionally glancing at him. The cat seemed completely uninterested in the massive alien who was terrified of him. Karen taught Zekthor about cat behavior. She showed him how to read their body language. A tail straight up meant a friendly greeting. A slowly swishing tail meant focus or mild annoyance. A rapidly swishing tail meant irritation or excitement. Ears forward meant curiosity. Ears flat meant anger or fear. She taught him about the slow blink. When a cat looked at you and slowly closed its eyes, it was a sign of trust. Zekthor practiced slow blinking at Mr. Whiskers. The cat did not blink back at first, but he did not run away either. Each day, Zekthor moved a little closer. By the third day, he was sitting on the floor near the couch. Mr. Whiskers watched him with those green-gold eyes but made no aggressive moves. By the fifth day, Zekthor could sit on the other end of the couch while Mr. Whiskers occupied his favorite spot on the back. Karen explained that cats were not trying to be intimidating. They were just being themselves. They were predators, yes, but they were also capable of affection and loyalty. They bonded with their humans and could sense emotions. They were complex creatures, not simple monsters. On the seventh day, something changed. Zekthor sat on the floor, his back against the couch, reviewing training materials on his datapad. He was so focused on his work that he did not notice Mr. Whiskers jump down from his perch. The cat walked across the floor and sat down next to Zekthor. Then deliberately, Mr. Whiskers sniffed Zekthor's leg. His pink nose twitched as he processed the scents. Zekthor held perfectly still, barely breathing. The cat sniffed him again, then rubbed his head against Zekthor's leg. The purring started. That low, rumbling vibration that Zekthor now understood was a sign of contentment, not aggression. Then Mr. Whiskers did something Zekthor never expected. The cat turned around 3 times and curled up against Zekthor's leg, forming a perfect circle of orange and white fur. Within moments, he was asleep, his small body warm and soft against Zekthor's scales. Karen, who had been reading a book in her chair, looked up and smiled. "Congratulations," she said quietly. "You have been officially accepted by a cat. That's actually a pretty big honor." Zekthor looked down at the sleeping creature against his leg. The fear was still there, a quiet whisper in the back of his mind. But it was different now. Not panic, not terror, just awareness, respect. He carefully reached down with one hand and touched the cat's fur. It was incredibly soft, warm from the cat's body heat. Mr. Whiskers' purring got louder, but he did not wake up. For the first time in days, Zekthor felt at peace. The final examination for Lieutenant Murphy's advanced tactics class came at the end of the semester. It was a practical test, a survival scenario in the station's massive simulation room. The room could recreate any environment from any known planet, complete with weather, terrain, and program challenges. Cadets would be divided into teams and dropped into different zones of a hostile planet simulation. They needed to navigate through dangerous territory, work together despite their species differences, and reach an extraction point within 12 hours. The teams would face environmental hazards, equipment failures, and combat scenarios that would test everything they had learned. Zekthor's team consisted of the 3 human cadets he had been working with all semester: Pete Johnson, Lisa Grant, and Danny Cole. They had become friends over the past few weeks, especially after Zekthor had started managing his fear of cats. They did not tease him about it anymore, though they did sometimes share funny cat videos with him that made him uncomfortable, but also made him laugh. The morning of the examination, they met in the preparation room to check their equipment and review their strategy. Lisa had Shadow with her, which was allowed according to Academy regulations. Pets could accompany cadets during extended exercises for morale support. It was a very human rule that most other species found strange. Shadow rode on Lisa's shoulder as usual, his yellow eyes bright and alert. When he saw Zekthor, the cat's ears perked up. Zekthor made the slow blink gesture he had learned, and Shadow blinked back. "It was progress. Everyone ready?" Pete asked, adjusting his equipment pack. "Ready," Danny confirmed. "Ready," Lisa said, reaching up to scratch Shadow's head. Ready, Zekthor said, feeling more confident than he had in weeks. His training scores had improved significantly since he had stopped obsessing over cats. Understanding them had freed his mind to focus on what really mattered. Lieutenant Murphy entered the preparation room with her datapad. Team 7, you're assigned to Zone 4, Arctic mountain environment with unstable weather patterns. You will have limited visibility and potential avalanche risks. Your extraction point is 12 kilometers from your drop zone. Any questions? No, ma'am, they answered together. Good luck, Karen said with a slight smile. Remember your training. The simulation room was enormous, easily the size of several city blocks. When Team 7 entered their zone, the temperature immediately dropped to below freezing. Snow fell from a realistic sky. Mountains rose around them, white peaks disappearing into clouds. Wind howled through narrow passes. Okay, Pete said, checking his scanner. Extraction point is northwest. We need to navigate through these mountain passes, stay together and watch for environmental hazards. They started moving, their breath creating clouds in the cold air. Zekthor's species was adapted to warm climates, so the cold bothered him more than it bothered the humans. But he pushed through the discomfort. Warriors adapted to any environment. For the first 4 hours, everything went according to plan. They navigated through narrow passes, avoided a simulated avalanche, and dealt with equipment failures by working together. Lisa's knowledge of mountain environments helped them choose safe routes. Danny's technical skills kept their navigation equipment working. Pete's leadership kept them organized. Zekthor's physical strength helped when they needed to move large rocks or pull themselves up steep climbs. Shadow seemed unbothered by the cold. His thick black fur kept him warm, and he remained perched on Lisa's shoulder, occasionally climbing into her pack when the wind got too strong. Then, during their 6th hour, something went wrong. Really wrong. They were crossing through a narrow canyon when alarms started blaring. Red warning lights flashed throughout the simulation room. An automated voice announced, "Critical system failure. Chemical leak detected in Zone 4. This is not a simulation. All cadets must evacuate immediately." What? Danny looked at his scanner. This is part of the test, right? No, Pete said, his face pale. Look at the walls. Zekthor looked. The walls of the simulation room were visible through the false snow, and yellow warning lights were flashing along the base. Something had genuinely gone wrong with the station's systems. We need to get out of here, Lisa said. But which way? The automated voice continued. Toxic fumes entering Zone 4. Evacuate through emergency maintenance tunnels. Main exits are blocked. Maintenance tunnels. Zekthor looked around. Where are they? They're behind the wall panels, Pete said. But I don't know where the access points are. The maps aren't showing them because this area is supposed to be simulation only. The air was starting to smell strange, sharp, and chemical. Zekthor's respiratory system was more sensitive than human systems. He could feel the irritation in his lungs already. We need to move now, he said. Shadow suddenly jumped down from Lisa's shoulder. The cat landed in the snow and immediately started walking away from the group, heading toward a rocky cliff face that was part of the simulation. Shadow, no, Lisa called. Come back. But the cat did not stop. He walked with purpose, his tail straight up, heading directly for what looked like a solid wall. Wait, Danny said. Cats have incredible senses. Maybe he knows something we don't. We have to trust him, Zekthor said. Follow the cat. They ran after Shadow. The black cat moved quickly through the snow, leaving tiny paw prints. He reached the cliff face and disappeared into a shadow that Zekthor had thought was just a dark spot in the rock. When they got closer, they saw it was actually a gap in the simulation wall, an access panel that had been left slightly open. Shadow squeezed through easily. The humans had to remove the panel completely, but within a minute they were in the maintenance tunnel behind the simulation room. The air here was clearer, not contaminated by whatever was leaking into the simulation zone. Shadow, you brilliant cat, Lisa said, picking him up and hugging him. The tunnels were dark and narrow, lit only by small emergency lights along the floor. The humans could barely see. Zekthor's vision was better in low light, but even he struggled with the complete darkness in some sections. Shadow wriggled free from Lisa's arms and jumped down. He started walking again, moving confidently through the darkness like he could see perfectly. Which Zekthor realized he probably could. He knows where he is going, Zekthor said. Follow him. They followed the cat through the winding tunnels. Shadow's white chest spot was the only thing visible in the darkest sections, a small moving beacon leading them forward. The cat never hesitated, never seemed confused. His superior night vision and his ability to navigate in complete darkness made him the perfect guide. After 20 minutes of following Shadow through the tunnels, they saw light ahead. The cat had led them to a major maintenance junction that connected to the station's main corridors. They climbed out exhausted and shaken, but safe. Emergency crews were coordinating in the corridors, dealing with the chemical leak. Lieutenant Murphy saw them emerge and ran over. "Thank God you are all safe," she said. "The leak was in the environmental control system. We had to evacuate all the simulation zones. How did you find your way out through the maintenance tunnels?" "Shadow led us," Pete said, gesturing to the cat now sitting calmly in Lisa's arms. Karen looked at Shadow and smiled. Of course he did. Cats always know the way. Later, after the emergency was resolved and the leak was fixed, Team 7 was awarded top marks for their examination. The instructors ruled that their creative, problem-solving and ability to trust an unexpected guide showed exactly the kind of adaptability the Academy wanted to teach. The graduation ceremony was held 3 weeks later. Zekthor stood with his class, wearing his dress uniform and feeling proud. He had passed all his classes, overcome his fears, and learned valuable lessons about courage and respect. After the ceremony, Lieutenant Karen Murphy approached him with a small package wrapped in simple paper. "This is for you," she said. "A graduation gift." Zekthor carefully opened it. Inside was a small holographic projector, the kind that could sit on a desk. When he activated it, a three-dimensional image appeared, showing Mr. Whiskers sleeping in a patch of sunlight. Underneath the image, words scrolled, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." "Thank you, instructor," Zekthor said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will treasure this. You earned it," Karen said. "You came here thinking you knew what it meant to be fearless. You are leaving understanding what it means to be brave. That's real growth." Zekthor returned to his people with the hologram. He kept it on his desk at his new assignment on a deep space patrol ship. When other Krathian warriors asked about it, he told them the story of Earth's cats. Most did not believe him. They thought he was making up tales about tiny predators that humans kept in their homes. But then the Galactic Defense Force started a new program. They began assigning what they called morale officers to allied ships, specially trained cats that could live in space environments and provide companionship to crews during long missions. When the first cats arrived on Krathian ships, there was chaos. Warriors who had never known fear suddenly understood what Zekthor had tried to explain. The cats were small, but they commanded respect through sheer presence and confidence. Slowly, the Krathian warriors learned what Zekthor had learned. They